Hi everyone. Welcome back to another video on my Storytime channel. So, I'm going to continue reading They Shook Hands. They Shook Hands is my favorite Harry Potter fanfiction. I've said this many, many times on this channel, but my opinion still stands. They Shook Hands is my favorite fanfiction from Harry Potter. Yeah, They Shook Hands is my favorite fanfiction about Harry Potter. So, now that I've said all that, let's continue reading then. They Shook Hands, Year 2, Chapter 2, Malfoy Manor. Let's continue then. Harry awoke as the sunlight beamed through the open window, illuminating the whole guest room. It reminded him of a lot of mornings in the Slytherin dungeons. If one didn't have the green velvet curtains drawn around the four-poster bed, the sun would shine on your face as it rose over the lake, just as the sun was doing to Harry now. He yawned and stretched. The bed was so very comfy, he thought sleepily. What was completely new to him was that he could stay in bed. Harry reveled in the thought. He didn't have to get out of bed unless he wanted to. There were no Dursleys to pound on his door and insist that he get up to cook breakfast. Maybe he could even have breakfast in bed. Rich people did that, he knew, and the Malfoys were certainly rich. In the Wizarding world, he was rich too. Perhaps that Dobby creature would bring up a tray. Elon had told him that the house elves were servants. Despite the early morning light, Harry dozed off again. The sun rose higher in the sky, and the birds began to chirp outside, boasting about their eggs, glorifying the clear skies. When Draco shook him awake again, he yawned wide enough to drive a lorry through. "Good morning, Harry," Draco said cheerfully. "Morning," he replied thickly. His mouth felt icky. He needed to brush his teeth. "Did you sleep well?" Draco went to the window and opened it even further. The morning breeze rustled the draperies, carrying the scent of wild grass. "More or less," Harry replied, yawning again. "Weather looks to be nice today," Draco noted. "We should have some good flying for the Quidditch game." "Quidditch?" Harry perked up. He loved playing Quidditch. He threw back the covers and got to his feet. Draco nodded. "There's a full pitch out back. We'll make a fire call to the others after breakfast. I know they're all going to be relieved to know you're okay." Harry nodded as well. "I can't wait to see everyone. I've missed them," he frowned. I don't understand why no one has sent me any letters. Not even a birthday card." "Oi, did I wish you a happy birthday yesterday?" Draco asked. Harry's brow wrinkled as he thought about it. "I don't remember." "Well, happy birthday, Harry," Draco wished him. He frowned as well. "That is strange they didn't get my card. I sent it first thing in the morning." "It's a mystery," Harry agreed. "Indeed. So ready to go down for breakfast?" "In a minute," Harry said, rummaging in his trunk and pulling out his toothbrush and some clothes. Draco showed him to the water closet, and after a few minutes, Harry felt much more human. "Food," he said, listening to his rumbling stomach. Draco laughed. "You sound like Goyle." "Goyle's a smart person," Harry said. Draco laughed even harder. He led the way down the stairs, across the foyer, into the east wing of the manor, and finally into the dining room. By day, the manor seemed open and airy. The walls were of a finely carved wood and radiated an inner warmth. Elon joined them a few minutes later as several house elves began carrying in trays of hot food. Harry dug in deeply after watching Draco and Elon pile their own plates. "Sleep well, Harry?" Elon inquired for a mouthful of toast. Harry nodded. "You?" "Very well, thank you." Elon offered Harry the platter of bacon. "Quidditch?" asked his older brother. "I suppose I have a pass or two," Elon considered. "But I'd much prefer to watch Quidditch." "Last time you supposedly watched us play, you were snogging with Jamie," Draco teased. Elon took a sip of orange juice. "You and Tracy could play the same game if you wanted to," he threw back. "It would be almost the same thing." "Ew," Draco said, fake shuddering. "Good morning, boys," came a pleasant urban voice from the doorway. "Morning, Father," Elon and Draco chorused. Lucius Malfoy sat down at the head of the table. He was wearing a buttoned-up silver shirt and black trousers under an open wizard's robe, also black. He reached for the eggs and met Harry's eyes. "I say," he said, "you're not one of mine." He smiled then. "Good morning, Harry. I trust that you slept well?" "Yes, sir," Harry said. Mr. Malfoy didn't seem to be very fazed, which in itself surprised Harry. "I suppose my son snuck out last night and took a trip to Surrey, did they?" he asked, buttering some toast. Draco didn't answer as his mouth was currently full, but Elon nodded. "Neither Draco nor I had gotten a letter from Harry all summer, Father. We feared the Muggles might be mistreating him." Mr. Malfoy's lip curled. "Don't mention Muggles at the table, Elon." "Sorry." "Well, you're certainly welcome here, Harry," Mr. Malfoy said. "My home is yours." "Thank you, sir," Harry said. "I'm glad to be here." Two owls soared into the dining room at that moment. dropping copies of the Daily Prophet on the table, one in front of Harry and the other in front of Mr. Malfoy. Harry shoved his to one side and continued eating his breakfast. He was having bacon and sausage. Abruptly, Mr. Malfoy slammed his hands flat on the table. He rose to his feet, staring down at the newspaper. Then his head snapped up, and his gray eyes were cold as he glared at his sons. "You idiots!" he hissed at them. "Father?" Draco asked, startled. "What, in Merlin's name, possessed you to pull such a stupid, ill-conceived stunt as that?" Mr. Malfoy shouted. Elon opened Harry's copy of the paper. Harry caught a glimpse of the headline. Death Eaters abduct Harry Potter. Elon paled considerably and gulped. "Black robes? White masks? Were you trying to get yourself sent to Azkaban?" Mr. Malfoy's face was twirled in the snarl. "Did you have a sudden urge to go visit your aunt?" "I am not like Aunt Bella," Elon said hotly. We... Draco was fumbling, and for the first time Harry had ever seen him without the right words to say. "Your little stunt was certainly insane enough for her to have thought it up," Mr. Malfoy sneered. "Reckless, thoughtless, and downright foolhardy. I thought I raised you better than that." "If we had merely knocked at the door, those muggles wouldn't have taken us seriously, Father," Elon said in forced civil tones. "You saw them at the station, and they also saw us at the station. They know I'm a student. They would know I couldn't use magic during the holiday. I had to frighten them. I had to make them fear us." "Oh, that part was certainly achieved," Mr. Malfoy sneered. "I have no doubt the worthless muggle soiled himself. You miserable fool! Are you really so empty-headed that you think Albus Dumbledore would not have eyes watching over Harry Potter at all times? I'm making inquiries of the various offices of the Ministry trying to get Harry removed, but those muggles are his legal guardians even in our world." Mr. Malfoy clenched his fist now. His right hand was very close to his wand, and Harry could see his fingers twitching. "I'm absolutely disgusted. There are right and wrong ways to go about this, Elon. You most definitely chose the stupid way. It's a high crime to have been a Death Eater. Do you have any idea of the danger you've put this family in? How could you be so clearly brainless?" "Father, Silence, Elon," Mr. Malfoy snapped. "You're the eldest. You're supposed to have some form of gray matter between your ears. Instead, I discovered that your head is filled with marmalade. Thus, I realized that when you lost your heart, you lost your head as well." Elon turned bright red. His mouth was partly open, but no words were coming out. Mr. Malfoy looked nearly as angry as Uncle Vernon sometimes did. His face hadn't gone red, but he was very pale. His lips were bloodless from being pressed together. "You are both in more trouble than they have any conception of. Rooms! Now! Move!" Draco and Elon ran out of the room as fast as possible. Mr. Malfoy took a deep breath and unclenched his hands. "Now, of course, I don't blame you, Harry," he said in a strained voice. He took another deep breath. "It's not your fault that my sons are completely blithering idiots. Feel free to roam around anywhere in the manor. I'd show you around myself, but I have some damage control to see. Please excuse me. To see to. Please excuse me." When Mr. Malfoy left the room, Harry didn't quite know what to do. Everything had happened so fast that his head was spinning. He picked up his copy of the paper and began to read. Death Eaters abduct Harry Potter. Little Winged Surrey, 2 black-robed, white-masked wizards broke into the home of Harry Potter's legal guardians and abducted him last night, according to an anonymous source. The wizards, identified as of press time, were last seen flying southwest from Surrey with Potter in their custody. A spokesman for the Ministry of Magic would not comment, and no further information is available. The article gave more questions than it answered. What were Death Eaters? The name sounded horrible, but it was familiar to Harry. It was one of the Slytherin rules, he remembered. Slytherin does not mean Junior Death Eater, he said to himself. But what is a Death Eater? Regardless of what it was, the story was absolutely untrue. He hadn't been abducted, he'd been rescued, he'd gone willingly. Mr. Malfoy knew it was completely untrue as well. That must have been what he meant by damage control. Obviously being a Death Eater wasn't a good thing. There had to be some way he could help set things right. Harry resumed eating his breakfast, doing what Goyle would have done in his place. He wouldn't get anything accomplished on an empty stomach, and the food was good. He drank the last of his milk and left the dining room. Exploring on his own didn't sound like much fun. He'd rather spend some time catching up with his friends. Harry made his way upstairs and knocked on Draco's door. "Draco?" he called. "Can I come in?" His best friend opened the door. "Hello, Harry." Harry stepped aside. The room was very similar to Elon's bedroom, with bookshelves, tapestries, and posters adorning the walls. Draco's posters were of the monstrous magpies rather than the Appleby arrows. Draco threw himself on his bed. "Sorry about breakfast," he said. "That was fairly ugly, and you shouldn't have had to see it." "What was it all about?" Harry asked. He gave his friend a direct look. "House Rule 7 says that Slytherin doesn't mean Junior Death Eater." "What's a Death Eater?" Draco didn't answer immediately. "Death Eaters are what you-know-whose followers are called," he finally said. "As ashamed as I am to say it, you deserve to know that my father used to be one of them." Harry felt his world stagger a bit. "What?" he exclaimed in a stunned voice. Draco wouldn't look at him. "It's true," he said quietly. "When he was younger, my father joined the ranks of he who must not be named. He agreed with a lot of the things that you-know-who was saying. Muggles and Muggleborns are inferior, purity of blood is supreme, and all that. At first it was alright, but then things started to change. The deeper he got into the dark magic, the more it ate away at his mind, Elon said from the doorway. He started abusing his own followers, casting horrible curses on them, and so on. By the time you-know-who actually killed one of his Death Eaters, Father knew he'd made a terrible mistake. If Father finds out you're not in the room, they'll be hell to pay, Draco warned his older brother. Elon shrugged. I'm in about as much hot water as is possible to be in, he said. Besides, Harry deserves to know what's going on. By that time, of course, it was too late, he continued. By that time, of course, it was too late, he continued. One did not just quit the service of the most powerful dark wizard the modern world has ever seen. Solity was rewarded with death. Harry couldn't believe what he was hearing. Those evil wizards killed my family, he sputtered. Now you tell me that your father was one of the gang? No, Elon exclaimed, grabbing hold of Harry's arm. You leaned in close. Harry, listen to me. The night Voldemort went after you and your parents, he was alone. None of the Death Eaters were with him. They played no part in your parents' deaths. Harry didn't listen and jerked his arm away. You pretend to be my friends? Harry didn't listen and jerked his arm away. You pretended to be my friends? Elon narrowed his eyes. We are your friends, Harry. If we were like you-know-who and wanted you dead, don't you think we'd have killed you long before now? Father made a mistake. He's not perfect. He can hardly be held accountable because you-know-who went insane. That part of his life is over. Did you hear him at breakfast? He said that his home is yours. Is that what you say to someone who you want to kill? Harry felt his anger faltering. I don't know. I don't know. Search your feelings, Harry. You know what I'm saying is true. Father told me very specifically that last Christmas that he is grateful to you for freeing him from his servitude. He wouldn't wish you-know-who back for anything. Harry sat down in the chair with a thump. Everything was happening so fast. It was too much to take in all at once. He looked up and saw Elon's face full of sincerity. He looked over and saw Draco looking away, too ashamed of the secret he'd been told to even face in Harry's direction. With his knees shaking, Harry got to his feet and stepped towards the door. I need some air, he croaked as he hurried from the room. In the corridor, he leaned against the wall. He took a deep breath. He started walking. Wandering the manor gave Harry plenty of time to think. Round and round in his head, he kept hearing the conversation over and over again, but he couldn't settle it one way or the other. Had he really gone along willingly with the Death Eaters? He decided he would have to talk directly to Lucius Malfoy. Harry ducked into the guest room where he best spent the night and got his wand out of the trunk. He wasn't supposed to use magic during the holiday, but for some reason he wanted the comforting feel of the wand sheath on his belt. Harry felt much better just holding the simple wizardry. The Hollywood felt warm to the touch. He went downstairs and back into the dining room. Mrs. Malfoy was just sitting at the table, and she looked at those sheep and crying. Good morning, Harry, she said in a voice so cheery that Harry knew it had to be fake. Good morning, ma'am, he replied. I was looking for Mr. Malfoy. He should be in his office, she said. He's probably making flower calls to the solicitor. I'm afraid the boys really twisted things up this time. She bit back a sniffle. I don't really understand what's going on, but the newspaper article is all wrong, Harry told her. I just need to get the truth out. Nobody abducted me. All you really need to do is to make a public statement denying the article. It should all blow over. You also know a lot of people. Do you know any reporters? Mrs. Malfoy nodded slowly. As it happens, we do. That might just do the trick, she said, sounding a bit more hopeful. Come, let's go find Lucius. Harry followed her up to the second floor and down the corridor. In the place he reckoned was directly above the master bedroom of the first floor. She stopped. The door to the office was closed, but Mrs. Malfoy just walked right in. Harry trailed behind her. Lucius Malfoy was sitting at his desk with his head in his hands, muttering to himself. Lucius, Harry would like to talk to you. He has an idea that you should listen to. It just might keep the boys out of Azkaban, she said, her voice breaking. She turned and left, closing the door behind her. Mr. Malfoy looked up at Harry with a forced smile on his face. Yes, Harry? What is your idea? Harry drew up all his courage and looked at the older man full in the eye. Were you there the night my parents were murdered? He asked coldly, cutting right to the heart of the matter. Mr. Malfoy's eyes widened in astonishment, then narrowed in displeasure. Then they relaxed and he leaned back in his chair. Those boys need to learn to keep their mouths shut, he muttered. He took a sip from the glass of water on his desk. No, Harry. I give you my word as both a Slytherin and a Malfoy that I was not in Godric's Hollow on the night your parents were murdered, he said seriously. The Dark Lord told us only that he had personal business to attend to, and that he would summon us later that night. We never saw him alive again. Mr. Malfoy rose to his feet and looked out over the courtyard. I have many regrets about that period of my life, he said. There are many times that when I wished I had been stronger, that I had the courage to stand up against him. It was just so my own life had been at stake. I probably would have, he sighed, taking another drink. But I had a wife and a son to think about. Given the choice between killing mudbloods and muggles and losing my own family, there was really no choice at all. Then Draco was born, and I had even more reason to fear. He turned around and looked at Harry. You freed me from that life, Harry. No one knows why Voldemort's powers were undone that night. But they were, and ever since, those of us who made the mistake of accepting his mark have been able to live without fear. Thank you. You know that I'm forever in your debt. Harry let the last of his anger evaporate. When he had defeated Voldemort, he had done more than what he was credited with and revered for by the whole of the Wizarding world. He also lifted the yoke of fear and terror from those who had no way out. Elon was right. They would never want to kill him. I think we know a way we can settle the situation, Harry said, changing the subject. Mr. Malfoy's eyebrows lifted. Oh? Let's hear it then. Mrs. Malfoy says you know a reporter, Harry asked. What if I just make a public statement to the effect that nobody kidnapped me and there were no Death Eaters? Okay, so this is part 1 of They Shook Hands Year 2, Chapter 2. Take it, everybody. Another video from my Storytime channel.